Good evening, everyone. I would like to take a moment to call our September the 6th regular town board meeting to order. Thank you all for joining us here in Town Hall, as well as watching on YouTube and Boxcast. If you wouldn't mind, those in the chamber, please make sure that your phones are on vibrate or turned off. We would greatly appreciate that as we do the town's business. And if you wouldn't mind joining me for a moment of silence. Thank you. Now, if you would stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now open it up for staff questions. Does anyone on the board have questions for staff? Commissioner Boone.
Yes, I have a question for the town manager, and it's a follow-up on the traffic signal at Highway 21 and North Downs Lane. Can you tell us where we're at on that?
Yeah, I think Mr. Trott's here somewhere. There he is. He's all ready to go.
Yes, so we've been talking with NCDOT about the traffic signal. They have actually completed a signal design on that already, and we're working with them on an agreement and so that they can actually go build it, hopefully at much less cost than we initially thought. So we're continuing to work on that, hopeful that that traffic signal can be in before the end of the year.
That is actually great news. Thank you very much for that. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, we will go into our public comments, requests, and presentations. And I will start this evening with the Constitution Week proclamation. If you wouldn't mind joining me up here. These are necessary. I'd like to thank you all for coming. For those of you who don't know, would you mind introducing yourselves?
Yes, I'm Susan Gammon. This is Eileen Bright and Alice Blanchard, and we are members of the Alexandriana chapter, Daughters of the American Revolution.
Thank you so very much for joining us this evening. And I'm going to read a proclamation for Constitution Week. Whereas September the 17th of 2022 marks the 235th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to read, study, and preach the greatest document of human liberty, and to protect the freedoms set forth in the Bill of Rights, and whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize this magnificent document and the anniversary of its creation, and whereas it is fitting and proper to officially recognize the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion, and whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Melinda Bales, Mayor of Huntersville, do hereby proclaim September the 17th through the 23rd of 2022 as Constitution Week in Huntersville, North Carolina, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals the framers of the Constitution had in 1787. It is such an honor to present this proclamation to you, and thank you for all that you do with the chapter.
Thank you very much.
Get it? Thank you so
And I
very
have a
much.
special gift for the town board.
Oh, wonderful.
Last year, I asked the town board a question, and it didn't go over so well. So this year, I'm not going to ask any questions. Except, do you remember what you just read in So on September 17th at 4 o'clock, I expect all of you to be standing on your front porch, ringing a bell. It can be this bell, or it can be a bigger bell, because that's the time that the Constitution was signed, at 4 o'clock. So there you go.
Thank you. And I don't know if those watching heard that, but on September the 17th at 4 p.m., encourage all of our citizens to stand on their front porch and ring a bell, because that is the time that the Constitution was signed. And I would like to take a moment and just thank each one of you for coming and reminding us of the importance of Constitution Week. So we are going to go ahead and move forward with the public comments. Stephen Swanick, Mr. Swanick, if you wouldn't mind coming, stating your name for the record and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
Absolutely. My name is Stephen Swanick, and I live at 203 Mount Holly, Huntersville Road. Tonight, I'm here speaking on behalf of Revitalize Downtown Huntersville, or RDH. We are a citizen-led group with the mission of helping our downtown be the vibrant hub of live, work, and play we all know it can be. You might have even seen some of our green signs popping up at homes and businesses around where we are right now. You can learn more about our cause at revitalizehuntersville.org or our Facebook page, but that's not what I'm here to talk about tonight. Tonight, because it's on the agenda, I'm here to talk about Town Hall. The Revitalize Downtown Huntersville group sponsored a survey over the past 3 weeks, which was closed today. It was a simple poll asking one question: which option for downtown Town Hall do you want? We got a staggering 316 responses, which I personally was overwhelmed by, considering how hard it is sometimes to get citizens engaged. The 7 options were those well familiar to you. The 2 original options, shovel-ready across from Discovery Place Kids, and the additional 5 options presented to this very board about a month ago. The winning option out of 316 responses was known as 4B, to renovate this building and add a 4-story annex that won a plurality of 32%. The second and third place options were the across-the-street options, totaling 19 and 16%. And the remaining options of those 7 all scored less than 10% each. We will be posting the full details of this poll, or really just those results in total, with some fancy bar charts, to Facebook either later this evening or tomorrow. But I thought it important that we share this information with you to show, one, how engaged the citizenry was in having a say in this, and also hoping that it can provide some clear guidance to y'all. I am unfortunate to report that my takeaway from this is there is no clear takeaway. There was a pretty severe split between option 4B and the options across the street. So all I can say is good luck to y'all. Y'all have a tough decision to make, but I think it is important that the town hall matter be settled once and for all so that the planning for the future of our downtown can continue. And regardless, I personally and Revitalize Downtown Huntersville will support either option because we want to see positive change for our beloved downtown. Thank you all.
Thank you. Next up is Taylor Hutto. If you wouldn't mind coming and stating your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Taylor Hutto. I live at 127 Holbrook Street in Huntersville. Good evening, everybody. I'll make this short and mostly sweet. All of you sat with me at every forum that we had last summer, fall, and this topic, 10B, came up multiple times. So tonight, as it states, discuss and consider taking action, I ask that we take action tonight. I believe that we should make, and by we, I mean you, the fiscally responsible decision by choosing option 4B. Mr. Swanick mentioned 316 people participated in his survey, so you can tell that it's on other citizens' minds as well. Not only is it cheaper per square foot, but this option gives us the capacity to expand in the future if necessary, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the very reason we built this town hall right here where it is, to expand not only just 25 years ago. Let's see. If I could, I would say this in red, if I could say it in red, underline it even. The sliver that most people refer to in front of Discovery Place Kids, the shovel-ready option that Mr. Sonic mentioned, is simply not available for growth. There's no opportunity to grow there, with it being just 0.4 acres. This is something that I and many others, several of you sitting up here, stated several times over the last year. It's been said multiple times as well that our population is expected to grow from what it is, just 60,000 residents, to 100,000 residents in the next 10 years. So to put it simply, 4B, in my opinion, maximizes growth opportunity, and if I'm being honest, I don't really want to pay for another town hall in 20 years when we grow out of any of the other options. And that's it.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Ron Julian. Or should I say former Commissioner Ron Julian? Thank you for coming.
I'm going to defer my minutes to my wife.
Okay.
She told me to do.
Smart man. Teresa Julian, if you come, if you wouldn't mind stating your name, your address for the record, and you have 6 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Teresa Julian. I live at 110 North Maxwell Avenue in Huntersville. First, just want to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I think I sent a letter to each of the board members this last week, and if I can, I'd like to have that added to the record. I'll give it to you in just a second. I guess I look at this and think it's hasn't been that long ago when we were November 2021 during an election time, and seems like all the candidates were really slamming the previous board. Some of you were on that, about spending $15 million on a town hall, and I believe it was nicknamed the Taj Mahal. I guess here we are, September 2022, not even a year, and we're looking at spending $28 million for option 4B. So I guess what I wanted to say, and I was glad I listened to Ms. Hutto's speech, is expansion, I think, is very important, and I think it's very important that we have that. I don't think enough people probably realize that the town owns Discovery Place for Kids. Come 2040 or sooner, if they wouldn't renew their lease, we're going to have a building that's 54,000 square feet sitting empty if we don't build on what is nicknamed the sliver. The other thing is, obviously, I looked at the agenda, and you're going to discuss the options. I've heard the rumor that there's going to be a motion to vote on the location, because obviously the board, it seems very split from what I have seen on which option, be it in front of DPK or behind this building. I think I'm concerned that if the rumors are correct and the location issue is voted on tonight, and the vote goes for this behind Town Hall, then the only options that were presented are going to be $24 to $28 million. It's going to be a lock-in and force others to vote on that. Having said that, if we build in front of DPK, the sliver, not only do we give this piece of property marketable commercial, as Steve mentioned, for the future of developing, revitalizing downtown, it also, which would give us, the town, the revenue from selling this, and I understand from The previous board, I think there was a restaurant interested in this piece of property, if what I'm hearing is correct, for around $1.2 million to turn the old town hall, current town hall, into that, into a restaurant. And then you're probably looking at totaling the rest of the land that we could develop, a total of maybe $3 million. When you look at that, look at the, having a DPK building that may be very well left empty, what do we do with it? We can't do anything with the land that's in front, because who's gonna build if we're not willing to sell a portion of our parking deck that we have? So you're basically looking at net, and I understand through the rumor mill, we're gonna apply the $12 million ARPA funds towards this. You're basically looking at a $4 million project after you've sold land, did the, built this building. You're looking at a $4 million versus a $15 million after the current town hall is with the ARPA funds. To me, that's big. The second thing is if we have a building, and talking about 20 years from now, what the expansion is, if we're built right next to Discovery Place, we're gonna have 90-some thousand square feet between a building that would be 36,000 square feet, a third story that we already occupy that's 18,000, and then another 36,000 at the point the lease is expired, at the least. So I think we should strongly consider all our options and what the cost to the taxpayers are. I appreciate it, Rob, you've been very upfront that you're not voting on either option, but, Commissioner Kidwell, sorry. But I'm concerned that there may not be transparency in trying to get this vote for the location and then forcing others to vote on that. So I guess I just wanted to say, I hear the 20 years down the road. I just think that if we build on, if not, we're gonna have two buildings that are government buildings, and nobody wants to look at a revitalized building with, a town with all government buildings. So, thank you, and I wrote about the Veterans Park, so you understand we have a park with no parking, that we don't own it, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, who has signed up to speak is Amy Holman. And if you come, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record. And Elaine Kearns, my understanding is you have deferred your 3 minutes to her, correct? So, Ms. Holman, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you. Amy Holman, 100 Cambridge Road. This is a compilation of quotes from minutes taken. Omissions are only for sake of brevity. No intent nor essence has been changed. December 21st, 2020, Town Board meeting, Mayor Annarella said, I asked to put this on the agenda. Sorry, quote. Our current fund balance as a town is $81 million, of which $20 million plus is unassigned at this time. As you see, the town is in very good financial health. Going back to 2006, there were plans to expand Town Hall. The problem is the town doesn't own any land and you need parking and so forth. I've spoken to at least 4 different groups that are interested in discussions for the current Town Hall and the parcels adjacent. End quote. Commissioner Bales said, quote, will this location serve our community long-term? I want to make sure that we are building it to last 40 to 50 years, end quote. In response, Town Manager Anthony Roberts said, quote, 3 floors plus DPK space will definitely hold us 20 plus years, but it's not gonna hold us for 50 years, end quote. In response, Bales said, quote, I am not interested in a 20-year Band-Aid. If we are going to build it, we need to build it for sustainability. I can't envision us building something we are going to sit here 20 years from now and regret, end quote. Bales said, quote, "In my opinion, we are not providing them with a safe enough of a working environment. We all need to do our part to provide the right space for not only our employees, but our residents, so that they may have a community space that they can come to and utilize and do it fiscally responsibly. I do not want to be part of the 20-year fix," end quote. Commissioner Hines said, though he was not for deciding that night, quote, "We do have the money. We could either pay cash for it or we can borrow it," end quote. Mayor Annarella said, quote, "We have $20 million we could use for some of the road projects, some of the greenways, but also for the town hall," end quote. February 1, 2021 Town Board meeting, Mayor Annarella said, quote, "It's appropriate to have a new town hall to have additional community space," end quote. Anthony Roberts said, quote, "There's many different financial ways you can do that, but we are financially strong enough to do it," end quote. May 17, 2021 Town Board meeting, quote, "Commissioner Boone said this is the only side that you've studied right there in front of the Discovery Place kids. Mr. Carlisto said that's what we were instructed to program for," end quote. September 20, 2021, Town Board meeting, Mayor Annarella said, quote, "That's a total of $5.4 million that could go towards this town hall, consolidate everything into one town hall. We are the best funded community in North Carolina," end quote. February 21, 2022 Town Board meeting, Anthony Roberts said that, quote, "The town has received an agreement for purchase of the sale of improved real estate from Jeffrey D. Howard trustee for the purchase of 105 North Maxwell Street, Huntersville, North Carolina. If the board moves forward, the closing will be 60 days from February 21. The reason for purchasing this property is to meet the need of the 2006 Downtown Master Plan and also for potential town hall expansion." Commissioner Kovacs made the motion. Commissioner Partee seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously, end quote. April 4th, 2022 Town Board meeting, quote, "Commissioner Munger made a motion to approve budget amendment appropriating $37,400 from fund balance to the land account to offset some of the purchase price of 105 North Maxwell Street." Commissioner Kovacs seconded the motion. Motion carried unanimously, end quote. June 6, 2022, pre-meeting, Mayor Bell said, "I would, quote, I would encourage the board to really think through putting everyone under one roof," end quote. Anthony Roberts said, quote, "You can do that over here and then lease that over there," end quote. He said, quote, "At that time, we did not own additional property behind the CarQuest building, and now that we do, you can make the current site even bigger, and you could have additional parking, and then the town could lease the top floor of DPK," end quote. Minute 1836, Commissioner Partee said, "I'm more leaning towards the expansion aspects of Town Hall," end quote. And then he asked about cost comparisons and architectural renderings. Commissioner Phillips said the original cost to build the sliver did not include the third floor. It was, quote, "ghost space." She said, quote, "It is the last little sliver of green space in downtown. Eventually, it could be the most expensive piece of land in Huntersville. We are cutting our nose to spite our face," end quote. Roberts agreed and said, quote, "The property is more valuable than it was in December 2021 because now it can be used for private use," end quote. Minute 2150, Mayor Bell said, "And I would agree with you, that if we're going to build over there, that we should sell it," end quote. Phillips responded, quote, "If you sell that, you could lease out DPK and then you start to get money back to offset whatever's gonna happen in the future," end quote. Minute 2347, she said, quote, "We need to do it, so no other board has to talk about this for the next 50 to 100 years, end quote. Mayor Bales responded, quote, "Well, that was the goal, originally, to have the complex," end quote. August 15, 2022 pre-meeting, minute 2619, Commissioner Munger asked Edifice and responded about the Annarella option. Quote, "If we build out all 3 floors, that would not be enough to house all of our staff right now." They said on day 1, yes. "So 10, 15, 20 years from now, we'd need more space," end quote. Minute 2701, Robert said, 4B, it would definitely house everything under one roof. And yes, it will be enough to house our people until I'm gone for sure," end quote. Minute 2743, Munger said, "As long as we're gonna do hypotheticals, I lean 4B, but that's a lot of money," end quote. Minute 3030. Mayor Bell said, while it may be the most expensive, 4B for long-term, for growth of our community, if we're really going to create a government center that would grow past us all, then B looks like it would make the most sense. If we continue to grow, there's always opportunity. The original town hall could be taken down. You could build it back up again here if you needed to. So I think it's interesting, end quote. Thank you.
Thank you. Last up is Lee Holman. Mr. Holman, as you come, if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Lee Holman, 100 Cambridge Road. I invite all of you to discuss this issue and would like to thank those that accepted and thank them for listening. As you know, I do my homework and we'd be glad to share the supporting data I have for the facts I'm getting ready to put in front of you. Most of it was taken from Edifice's latest presentation, but let's look at some comprehensive fact-based reasoning. So the comparatives are, I'm going to call it the Anarella model versus 4B. So yes, the Anarella model is cheaper at $19.5 million, completely built out, and 4B is $27.9, but you get what you pay for. The Anarella model is $537 a square foot, 4B is $447 a square foot, $90 less per square foot. The Anarella model is a 36,000 square foot building, whereas 4B is 62.5 square foot building. That includes this. The Anarella model has 3,000 square feet of community room in an upstairs area. 4B has 8,000 square foot of standalone community center. The Anarella model has no additional parking. 4B offers an additional 130 space surface lot, multi-use for the downtown area. The Anarella model is crammed on 0.3 acre. I did the math off Polaris. I don't know where they must have rounded up. 4B is 1.3 acres. I've done the math for this and can share it with you, but this supports, the Anarella model supports us to 2035. And at that point, we should be at 97,000 people based on the metrics that Edifice has given us. 4B will support us until 2046, at which point we'll have 130,000 people. The Anarella model puts employees in 2 locations, crossing the street, remember. 4B, again, is in 1 location. The DPK space keeps coming up. At that point, in 2035, when we're about out of space, DPK space will be 25 years old. And the lease extensions won't expire for another 5 years, so we'll be stuck. In 2025, just a side note, if we were to try to buy out the DPK space, the additional three ups of 5 years, it would probably cost somewhere between $10 million, or around $10 million to buy them out in 2025. That's based on replacement cost at $25 a square foot per year. The Anarella model has us overbuilding an already viable corner, whereas over here we're developing, we're doing the downtown development we have promised on a dead parcel that's been for sale for years. If you can imagine the construction phase on the Anarella plan, what are we going to do? I mean, how is that going to work? We're going to probably have to close DPK for a month at a time to even get started over there. Over here, you have plenty of room to stage your material and equipment, and access is on all 3 sides. The Anarella plan has nothing green on it. We have a civic green on 4B. It also integrates the Vine and Veterans Park. There's an opportunity to change your civic building style. The Anarella model it takes the downtown civic's presence down to a minimum, where 4B invites development by leading by example, showing other developers that we're willing to spend the money down here, so we hope you do too. Anarella model lacks public support, general public support. 4B is supported by the 2006 Downtown Master Plan and the Downtown Steering Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. All right, we will now move to agenda changes. Are there any agenda changes this evening? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
There is a motion, and there is a second. All those in favor adopting the agenda as presented? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We will now move to I'm sorry? We just did the consent. Yeah. Motion to adopt the agenda, the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
So there's a motion and there is a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, we will now move to the public hearing. We will be conducting a public hearing on petition TA 22-10. This is a request by the Town of Huntersville Planning Department to amend Article 8.2 related to limiting one principal single-family and duplex building to a lot. Mr. Farber, thank you for joining us this evening. And before I hand it over to you to put your staff report into the record, I would also like to acknowledge our planning board. If our members of the planning board wouldn't mind standing and introducing yourself.
Hi, I'm Trina Lewis. I've lived here for 12 years, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
I'm here as a private citizen.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, Mr. Farber, the floor is yours.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'll first submit my staff report into the record. Staff is here to propose an amendment to Article 8.2. Article 8.2 reads that only one principal building and its customary accessory buildings may be erected on any lot except that multiple buildings which, taken together, compose a single principal use may be erected on a single lot as permitted by the district regulations and described by building and lot type. Requirements of subdivision ordinance section 6.8 apply. We are proposing to add the following sentence. The multiple building exception shall not apply to single-family homes and duplex house types that are not a part of a retirement community or congregate care facility. We're recommending approval based on the amendment being consistent with policy LU 11 of the 2040 Huntersville Community Plan. We believe it is reasonable and in the public interest to amend the zoning ordinance because it'll protect the unique character of the existing housing stock by requiring all residential subdivisions to meet the same development standards. It is consistent with the definition of single-family home, and it provides options for future transactions. It is also similar to almost all of the surrounding communities in Mecklenburg County. And on September 1st, the HOAB voted 7-1 to recommend approval. And if you guys have any questions, I can answer them for you.
So we'll open it up for questions. Any questions from the town board? Commissioner Munger?
Sure. How you doing? Just one question real quick. Why shouldn't we apply this to retirement communities as well?
So partly because we already have so many of them in the town, and some of the existing retirement communities are considered condos. So really they're only applying to the insides of the buildings.
So just to be clear, this was the staff recommendation. The Ordinances Advisory Board agreed to it. If you decide that we want to include retirement communities, that's fine. Everything that's been approved is legal and fine, and new developments moving forward, if it's a retirement community, they too would have to provide the lot line. So as was mentioned by Nathan, we recommended to exclude those and the congregate care because we had some existing ones, but if you do decide to include retirement, that's fine too. Everything that's been approved is legal because it met the requirements at the time. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, is there any specific pro-con as to not including retirement communities?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, good enough for me.
Any other questions from the town board? I'd like to open it up to the planning board members. Do you have any questions for staff at this time? Okay, thank you so very much. Seeing no other questions, we will go ahead and close this public hearing this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Farber. We will now move to other business. Item 10A. This is regarding the Downtown Steering Committee status. The town board is asked to determine if the Downtown Plan Steering Committee should resume operations, and if so, to provide instructions to the committee as necessary to complete the final plan. Mr. Heel, thank you for joining us this evening.
It's a pleasure to be here. Mayor and Town Board Commissioners, obviously, on June 21st, there was a motion made to pause the downtown committee operations. And during that time, we talked with a consultant team, and we basically shut the whole project down during that period. Once we started working with Commissioners Phillips and Kidwell, the staff drafted a motion for consideration that's in your packets today. I think the important factor in all of this is the survey that was conducted of the committee members, and they asked a lot of questions in terms of expectations of the town board itself, what is staff doing right, what's not being done right, what's the reaction to the work being done by the consultants, et cetera. And I think that the takeaway from that was that there are some improvements that can be made, but that the downtown plan should continue to move forward with a similar schedule, the number of meetings, for example, the same budget, and the same scope of work. So during the pause, we've been in contact with Shook Kelly and their consultant team. They have reviewed the schedule that's been placed in the resolution. There probably will be some tweaks necessary to make sure that they're available for every single one of the meetings. But, and there's a clarification I did want to make. The first two meetings, meeting number 10 and 11, are committee meetings, but those would be conducted with staff only. And that is part of the idea of getting some ethics training and starting to re-gear and maybe go back and get a little bit better background in terms of zoning regulations that affect the downtown, and also kind of re-energize on the concept of what the steering committee really is tasked to do. So that would be the staff responsibility, and the town attorney, I think, helping us do that. The remaining meetings, there are 5 committee meetings, and 1 is a public forum. The last meeting, if you choose to do it this way, would be a joint meeting between the planning board, the town board, and the committee, which would signify a handoff of the draft plan to begin the formal review process by the planning board. So that's the intent. There are a lot of other provisions in here, and I'm not going to read them all, but I think that for you as a board, you need to discuss this, but if there's any questions I can answer, I'll be happy to do so.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open it up for discussion of the board. Anyone? Commissioner Kovacs?
I just wanted to say that this is pretty impressive, and I appreciate Mr. Hill and Commissioner Phillips and Commissioner Kidwell working so hard on it. Thank you.
I have to agree. Thank you both for taking this up and working with staff to pull this together. Some really good work that you did. Commissioner Munger.
Sure. Similar, I'd like to echo that sentiment. Thank you, Mr. Hill and Commissioner Kidwell and Phillips. It really lays it out quite nicely. My question, and it's just kind of a clarification. Do we have a diagram of exactly how big the quarter-mile radius is? And beautiful. Didn't see it. Got it.
Drop.
Thank you. And is there a specific reason why this committee would only be focusing on the quarter-mile radius, and I know that I might actually defer to Commissioner Phillips, because I believe she might be willing to answer that one rather than staff. I appreciate you too, Mr. Hill.
So I'm going to give you the layman's terms of it because Mr. Hill he blows it out of the water. When we did this, we looked at it a bit like how you look at an earthquake in an epicenter. So the 1/4 a mile is the directly impacted, and then outside of that is like the reverberation. And everything does impact everything together within the downtown area. But we felt like this met the standards listed in the survey, taking out the outliers, and it was pretty much the median of it all. Mr. Hill, would you like to add anything from your technical standpoint?
Technically, I think that was perfect.
So to be clear, to the north, does that half mile encompass the roundabout to the north? Or is it just outside the ring?
I think it might be just a touch outside, but it's touching it.
I'll answer it. It does include it, so it doesn't kind of show up here, but it does include it. And I will say from the first meeting in November, it was always a quarter mile, half mile, and the quarter mile is 5-minute walk. That's easy. A half mile is a 10-minute walk. It's got to be pretty interesting for you to walk the 10-minute walk. But anyways, it does include roundabout to roundabout. And interestingly enough, I'll just mention in 1995, the town did a community plan and in essence identified downtown from what is roundabout to roundabout, and right there at Gilead where it shows at Commerce all the way to Vermillion. And so even in 1995, that was kind of the downtown area. So.
Any other questions? Commissioner Kidwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Dave, Jack, I just want to thank both of you for your excellent work and communication with Stacy and I on this. And I want to thank the Downtown Steering Committee for filling out the surveys, giving us honest answers. We couldn't have done any of this without that information. I would like to say that, and it's not on here, but one of the rings was a 5-mile, I think it was 5-mile scope, which is large. And so, the quarter to half mile, I think it's a good focus area for that committee, and I look forward to them getting started and really going through this list. Thank you.
So is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make a motion.
Commissioner Phillips.
I would like to make a motion to resume the meeting functions of the Downtown Steering Committee effective immediately under the following conditions as listed in the agenda.
Second.
There is a motion and there is a second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We will now move to item 10B. This is to discuss and consider taking action on a new town hall. Mr. Roberts. Mr. Roberts, before we get started, or as you come up to the podium, would you level set for us? Because there's been some questions regarding the 50-year fix. And my question to you is, do all of the options presented to the board provide that 50-year fix?
Yes, ma'am. I'll get to that here in just a second. We'll address all that. I was going to go
Thank
through
you.
both options. I kind of narrowed it down to, let me make sure I get this thing to work. There we go. You hitting it, Bobby, or am I worried? Let me just,
Left and right.
left and right, okay. And then the pointer still work up top?
Yep.
So, Mayor, I want to start here. You can see what's outlined before you. I know the board, you can't see the pointer on the screen, but the two sites, the initial site here, and then the site here. I think Amy did a good job. I'm afraid to say too much because I may get quoted more, but but no, I think everyone did a good job. What I would say is, hearing all the discussion here, we got two good options to consider, and what I learned from all that, from I'd say all the groups, Revitalize, Save Downtown, what I got out of all that is, I think everybody's come to realize we need a town hall now, regardless of what group you're with. So to me, that says a lot. If you walk through these buildings, you'll see there's not a whole lot of seats to sit your butt down in anymore. So we've got to do something soon. And on these sites, I want to start with the original site first, because I think Amy or someone said, we didn't own that land. When we were considering this here, we didn't own that site there. And if you go plop in the buildings on top of that, you know, the various option 1, 2, 3, 4A, B, you had to have some more land to make it work, and you had very little parking. So this here changed the ballgame by purchasing that land. I think we purchased that land. I don't remember the date, but it was roughly $775,000 when we purchased that site. So that did change the ballgame for us. So sort of, let's start with the initial site first, and then I'll jump on the options here. I took the presentation that Edifice and those folks put together, and I kind of carved it down a little bit smaller, because it sounds like most folks are either looking at the initial site or what I'd say 4B. So that's kind of where I'm focusing my efforts on, and hopefully we can answer those questions. The numbers you're going to see in your packet, you know, you have to remember what they use in the field. They call them swag numbers. I can tell you what S, W, and G means, but A I better not say, because that I may get in trouble if I say what A is. So it's scientific wild guess. That's what typically they use these numbers for, what they come up with, because you're talking several years out. And when you go to put these out for bid, 2 years from now, can I tell you what that number is? No. So that's what they're using. So on the initial site, if you recall, on this initial site, we were looking at a 3-story building, roughly 36,000 square feet. I'm going to use this here in just a minute. Right now, this building is roughly 8,000 square feet. The third floor of DPK is roughly 18,000 square feet, where we house offices. And then the first and second floor of DPK is Discovery Place Kids. It's like a floor and a quarter. And I won't focus on how many square feet on those, because if you were to upfit that space at some later date, obviously, if it's 2040, God knows what it'll cost in 2040 to update that space, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So on the 3-story building, when we're looking across the street, on the sliver of land, I'll use that term, the first floor basically had a community room, had a small community room here, and then it had, the intent here was to bring over Parks and Rec, IT from the 3rd floor building, and bring them over here to create some space on the 3rd floor. IT is typically on the planning side. Parks and Rec is on the, I'm gonna say public engineering side. So it would free up some office space there to allow those departments to grow. It roughly would free up, as of today, 4 to 5 different spaces on each side if I move them over to a new building in this sliver. And then additionally, on the 1st floor, we'd have anywhere from 6 to 8 additional offices to grow into. 2nd floor, same thing. I say offices and or cubes to grow into. Because you can look on here and you'll see future spaces. It's hard to see here unless you blow it up. So that's roughly 6 to 8 on each floor to grow into. And then the 3rd floor, we left unfinished at that time. So you'd roughly have, let's just say, if we move that, you'd have roughly 8 spaces on the 3rd floor to grow into, butts and seats, and then 6 to 8 on each floor here. And then the 3rd floor would be your growth to sort of take you to, we'll say 2040. Anybody tells you they know how much we're going to grow and how many people we're going to grow from now to 2040, I want them to go to Vegas with me, because it depends on how we grow, et cetera. But we talk to department heads, we look at, how we've grown in the past and how we're growing now and come up with those numbers. So there is, on day one, if this was to be built, yes, there's space. And then obviously you have the 3rd floor. But is this going to, without the 3rd floor and without DPK, is it a 50-year fix? Absolutely not. So we'd have to have a 3rd floor, and then what they were banking on at that time was 2040, I think some folks mentioned, is when the DPK lease is up. We get roughly $30,000 a year for parking spaces for them to use that space. They can renew for 5-year increments, 2025 on up to 2040. Who knows what'll happen? And then in 2040, the board can make a decision on whether to take that space over and finish that space out. That finishing that space is not in these numbers, have no idea what that will cost. You know, haven't looked structurally at that, you know, to see what that will cost, who knows at that point in time. So that's sort of general information around the sliver of land, the 3-story building, 2 floors finished out. You have a boardroom, roughly, I think it's like 150 or so seats on one version. This may be 150 or more, say 150, 200 seats. And then you have a community space here, and then the 3rd floor is just blank. 3rd floor, depending on how you lay it out, is probably 35 to 40 max office cubicles on this space. So that's kind of what you're looking at in the sliver.
To be, just a quick question. So what I'm looking at now are these 3 floors plus the 3rd floor of town center totals the 54.5.
So that's right. This is roughly 36,000 square feet, and then DPK space is roughly 18. And you notice all of these different spaces that Edison and put together is around 54,000 square feet. Obviously, if you add in the town hall renovation, we'll get to in a minute, is another 8,000, so I think one of them was 64,000 square feet, or 60-something thousand square feet. So before I move from the sliver, we'll call it, to the other side of the street, any questions on this? 19 million is what they came up with. I wouldn't hold the 19 million. You got to bid it out. You know, you're looking at probably a year and a half before you get there. Yes, sir.
Just a clarification on the 19 million. That's 19 million for 3rd floor built out.
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct?
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions before I move on? I'm sure you can come back and ask questions. I just want to hit it while all this stuff I'm spitting out is fresh on your mind. Okay, I'll move on. That's just a rendering of what that could look like. So I've cut some of these down too, but there were 4 options in an A and B. I'm going to get more to 4B because I think most folks sort of lean there in these options, so I'm going to sort of focus on this. As I said before, if you look back at all those options, without this land, if you just took that right across, it's not feasible without the new land we purchased it, you know, 775. None of the options really are feasible because even if you were to cram it in here, you have very few parking spaces. For all that space, there's literally very few parking spaces. 4B provides you, you know, also, I'm around 130 spaces of surface parking. And then in the future, it allows you, one of the things we asked Edifice and Creech Associates to do is a layout, make sure if we were to take I'm going to say the parking deck across the street roughly and plop it down over here, make sure we have room for that. And that's why this is shaded out. So there's space for an additional parking deck at some point in time. That is not in these numbers. So that is not in the numbers we're talking about. I'm going to just hop to this because I think this sort of gets it. 4B and the pricing. You have to remember 4B is 4 stories building. It is 54,500 square feet under one roof plus the renovation of the 8,000 square feet. So, you know, I'm rounding up to 28 million. So let's just assume you were not. So there's a existing space here. There's a whole lot more space existing. You're talking 36, 18 already finished, and then 36 you're finishing on the sliver. Here you're talking finishing 54, and then also this existing town hall. So that's why so if you were to take out town hall, let's just say, just to look at some of these other numbers, you know, just say a $3 million number, you know, just sort of looking at these and then jumping to there. So renovating this space, I'm just rounding to 3 million. So you have to think this is a lot more square footage just on the surface that we're renovating. That's why that number's 28 million versus some of these other numbers. You see at the bottom, talking about the 19.5 to finish out the sliver 3 floors. The whole idea behind the space over there was, like you said, to get to the 50-year fix was in 2040, what do you do with DPK? And that's the decision the board made. The existing 3-story building over there with, yes, the top floor finished out at, let's just say 30, 35 offices, plus the others, were not the 50-year fix. It was all about what
Both
happens.
buildings
Yeah.
together.
And then, right, so just want to be very clear on that, but it would take you at least for 20 years with that floor, because you're talking all in right now today, you're talking 8, 16, 24, probably 55 spaces that we would have if you finished everything out with the moving, shifting around 55 cubes offices, just a rough number. So that'll be about double what we have, somewhere in there. So that's the thought behind that. This is all moving them over in this building, giving you a true community space, not a space within the building. This is a 8,000 square foot space. This is the existing town hall, and then 54,000, roughly 54,000 square feet and 4 stories is B. And I mean, I can go on. We can talk more about. Is this a 50-year fix? Absolutely, this is a 50-year fix.
Question. If 54.5 on this side's a 50-year fix, how is 54.5 not on that side not a 50-year fix?
So
If it's the same square footage?
So you have over that side, we have 36,000, and then was 36,000? So you had, when we were looking at it, that was a 50-year fix with the additional space. Here, we're saying, because we haven't laid this out, part of the thing over there is in that total space, you've got community room, you've got all that sort of eats into some of that space, and then the back of the house things that go with that. So that eats into some of that space. This gives you a lot more space because you're taking that community room out. When I say 50 years, it's a guess. If I told you, it's all a guess at 50 years. Like this building, I'm sure we thought was a fix for who knows how many years. And we started moving people out after 11 years, 11, 12 years. Same thing with the police department. So all of that stuff, when we're guessing 20 and 50 years, I say it's a 50-year fix. It all depends on how you grow. And that DPK space, with this, you still can use it. I don't know what the board's intentions is, so let's say we build this here. That third floor is still available. Now, you may decide to lease it. I think I heard that. You may decide to lease it. It's going to be tough to sell that building as long as that lease is in space and you're getting $30,000 in revenue for a floor and a half or so. So I don't know that if you were to sell it, I'm sure you could sell it, but you're not going to get the price you would want for it or what it's actually worth because you're kind of bootstrapped with that.
Till 2040?
Yeah, to that time. So, those are things to think about. So selling, and then, I hear stuff about the additional revenue we've got off of land. We've had additional revenue on the sales of lands. We bought some land. We've got all those numbers to talk about if you want to, but they're both good options. It's just a matter of what, where you want to locate it. And if we build some of the last 50 years, it may be the first thing we've ever built the last 50 years in a lot of places. So, I mean, it's a lot to consider, but the space is needed. If you ask Anthony what's his preference, I mean, they're both good. They really are both good options to consider. It's all about what your preference is and whether you're trying to, I do like the idea if you're going to do it, build it all at once. Don't shell the space. We were trying to I'm going to use the word value engineer. Some people call it maybe cheap out, not doing the third floor. But if you're going to do it, obviously it's going to be a lot cheaper to do it now than wait. And because the same thing here, I could do the exact same thing here on that $16 million number they say now. Sure, you could cut out a space and not build a fourth floor here and shell that out. And maybe even the third floor, shell it out, because you still got the 18 over there. It's all depending on what you're trying to achieve. So you can get this number down for sure. Value engine down and not fill a space, just not, take a floor and just make it shell. So, I mean, I know I rambled a lot, and it's a lot of information to take in. I think the citizens here did a good job, and most of what they said, is correct.
I think that the board, I have to say to this board, being able to look at multiple options. We didn't have this option at the time. I think that wading through these has been healthy to take a look at all of, that has been presented this evening, in the last few weeks. I'm interested in the numbers. I'm interested in what the impact is on the tax rate and how we're going to fund it, whichever option that may be. Can we take a look, I would like to ask Ms. Huffman if we can take a look at those numbers and the impact that both of these, I'm just going to just say it's either 3 stories across the street or it's option 4B over here. I think those were the 2 options that rose, and I would like for us to really take a look at the numbers.
Mayor, just remember a big, $3 million number is this space right here. So 28 to 19 is probably more like 24, 25 to 19.
Well, I don't think if we're going to build it over here, we're going to have to do, I just can't, I don't see us building a 4-story building but not doing this. So,
I'm happy to what if until you pull the plug on how long you'd like to talk about this. I'm going to recommend that if you decide to pursue a town hall, a municipal building is some of the simplest debt there is to get a good rate on. You can do any type of financing you want. There's a general obligation bond option, LOBS, limited obligation bond, which is one type of installment financing. Installment financing is the state's version of what your home mortgage is like. I went to the local government. If we issue debt on property, the local government commission has to approve every piece of that debt for every local government in North Carolina, county, city, whatever. I went to the local government commission's website to see what rate they approved debt on their August 2022 agenda. It was August 2nd. One piece of municipal building debt was a 3.41% for 20 years. Another town hall at $21 million was 3.5%. If you take nothing from this conversation, take from it, I'm not telling you we can issue at 3.5%. My crystal ball is very foggy on what future interest rates are going to be. But interest rates in August were at 3.5. Are they going to stay at 3.5? I doubt it. Are they going to move up? Are they going to move down? I don't know. If we issued $27,938,000, the exact dollar figure, I wouldn't do that. I would issue around a dollar figure. But if you issue the exact figure that the edifice report told us that they estimate it would cost, our first year debt service payment would be column E, which is $2,374. In the budget process, we estimated that 1 penny on the tax rate would generate $1,040,000. So if you, Bobby, if you'll move the cursor to cell H7, I have taken the first year principal, the first year payment of $2,374 and divided that by $1,040,000, which is what a penny on the tax rate generates, and that would tell you that the impact on the tax rate would be 2.28 cents. If you change cell C2 to any other figure, the 19.4 or any number you want to, would you use all or a portion of the future ARPA funding to minimize the amount that we borrow? You could. We can change that figure to anything you want to change it to. And then you see if you decide you're going to use the whole ARPA, $12 million, bringing the price that you'd finance down to 15.9, then the impact on the tax rate would be 1.3. I got one more thing I need to add here. Bobby, will you change cell C2 to $10 million? Will you change the principal amount to $10 million? Not because that's what we think, just that right there. Will you change that to $10 million? And will you change the interest rate to 5%? I don't know if interest rates are going to be 3.5. For the last 22 years of my career, when somebody asked me about how much debt would we be able to issue and how much would it cost us, I would recommend that you guesstimate that you can be able to issue debt at ballpark 5%. So the one thing I want you to take from this conversation is notice that column E, the payment amount of $1 million. The one rule I will allow you to rely on for the foreseeable future, you should be able to issue debt for the foreseeable future at 5% or less. So $10 million at 5% would cost us ballpark an estimate of $1 million. So think of this 10%. When you issue debt, that debt service payment initially is going to be ballpark 10%. Bobby very wisely has created separate sheets. So if you want to see some extremes, the 27 million issued at 3.5% was the first spreadsheet we looked at. The 27 less the 12 million in ARPA funding, which would be extreme case scenario. You can see what the debt service payment impact on the tax rate would be. If you issued debt on the entire 19 million or the 19 million less the 12 million in ARPA, to me, that's the extremes, and you can see what the impact on the tax rate would be. So help me remember, Bobby, 27.9 million, the maximum impact on the tax rate was 2.28. 19 million less the 12 million in ARPA would be issuing 4.7 million, so the minimum impact on the tax rate would be ballpark half a penny, 0.61. Here's the other caveat I will give you. Mecklenburg County is doing a revaluation in FY24. A penny on the tax rate in FY23 generated $1,040,000. I do not have any insider information about how much values increase. So I don't know what a penny is going to generate in FY24. I suspect it will be more than $1,040,000. I don't know what that number is, but my suspicion is all the estimates we just gave you are mere estimates, and not unlike Anthony commented, swags, this is just a general idea. I'm happy to slow down and respond to any questions you've got about how much debt service might cost.
All right. Commissioner Partee?
Ms. Hoffman, you mentioned the tax rate on the bonds or on the amount, $1 million, whatever we borrow, 12 million, 8 million, so forth. Is that tax rate passed on to the Huntersville residents?
I would recommend you assume it would be. You got some alternatives. You could say you're going to use fund balance for a portion of it. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could assume that you're going to do that.
In other words, the higher we borrow, the higher the tax rate, the lower we borrow, the lower the tax rate if we tend to pass it on.
I would say.
I mean, do we pass it on or do we float a bond to offset the tax rate? Is that possible?
I would assume that if you're going to issue debt, that debt service payment, you're going to need to increase the tax rate.
The tax rate.
For at least the last 3 years, we've used fund balance, which is government speak for savings, to balance our budget to fund multiple capital projects. So if your revenues are $1 million and your expenses are $1 million, and then you add debt service on top of that, you either need to cut into your $1 million expense budget or you need to generate additional revenue. For us, the most logical place to generate revenue would be the tax rate.
Okay. Has there ever been any incidents of municipalities defaulting on payment on bonds?
I'm going to word it this way. You can't default on your debt.
Can't default.
The local
Okay.
government commission would not allow it.
Commissioner Munger?
Excuse me. Bobby, can you flip us back over to whichever one C2 has $19 million? Whichever sheet. I apologize, I don't know which one it is. That one. All right, so we're looking at 1.59 on the tax rate and a 26.6. Can you tell me, in your opinion, because I know you can't look forward in that crystal ball, but you can look back, in February, what would the interest rate have been?
What could we have issued debt at in February of '21?
If we had made a decision? Would it have been 1.5?
It would, my guess is it'd been in the 2 range.
It would have been 2?
I'd be glad to look at LGC agendas and tell you what debt got issued for then, but I think 2 is reasonable for a AAA bond rated agency.
Let's go 2.25 just for the heck of it. Throw 2.25 in cell C3. $24,063. So our inaction has cost us $2.5 million on the total and 0.23 on the tax rate. If I go with the 2.25, which we agreed to compromise, and I think everyone in the room would recognize that the interest rate in February was much lower than it is now. That was just my question on curiosity on this particular item. Thank you.
And Mayor, what I would say is, I'd caution you, these, I know these are good examples, et cetera, but, you know, what I would say, it depends on how much you're gonna possibly put down on it. You know, are we doing installment financing? You know, is installment financing, we get those bids 2 years out? I know this is all good stuff to look at, but, you know, you gotta get to that point. But we can run these numbers any which way you want. The other thing, you've got revalue coming up, those kind of things. You know, you gotta look at all those different things. So I wouldn't get hung up on, I know Jackie loves spreadsheets, and we can run you a couple thousand of them right here. But it all depends on how we tackle this thing.
I think the Fed is going to change interest rates. I think it's going to go up. I hope it then comes back down. I don't know what they're going to do. And so will the interest rate be 3.5? I don't know. I literally looked at the LGC agenda today to see if they had released their agenda for September to see what interest rates, how much they had changed since August, and that's not out yet. So is it different? Probably. Is it higher? Probably. How much? I don't know. But it's going to change again, too.
You know, I think the decision facing this board is one that's generational. The decision that is made where once town hall is set and we are moving forward, it is generational, because I think if the 50-year fix, I don't know how many of us sitting in this room are going to be here. I'd like to think I'm going to live to 102, 104, but it's probably not in the cards. So what this board is making a decision around not only, thank you for pulling for me, not only impacts us today, but impacts us for our children and our children's children. So, you know, there's a lot, there is a lot for you to wade through. Don't make this decision lightly, for sure. But the numbers, I think, are very important for us to understand. To understand it's really not, based off of what I just saw, it's not 28 million, it's 38 million, because you got to factor that interest rate in there. How do we tackle it? I mean, that's the $20 million question on either option. But it's one that you're going to have to make on behalf of the citizens of this community in order for our community to move forward. Any other questions, comments? Commissioner Kovacs?
I just wanted to respond to Commissioner Munger. I understand your sentiment because I was on board with that idea, how I hated that waiting would cost us more money, which is another reason I didn't want to wait until the bond either. But you said this is something that we have done, but previously when the town board, or when the town hall options were given, there weren't options. There was one place. And so I know that us taking time, unfortunately, interest rates have raised, but I think that's just us doing our due diligence to hopefully save money over time. So I understand what you're saying with the money, but with only one option, we couldn't make a responsible decision.
Any other? Commissioner Boone?
Yes, I've got a question for Jackie Huffman. Something tells me I shouldn't ask this question, but I'll try it anyway. You said that we shouldn't take any money out of fund balance to reduce this debt. Is that?
Issuing debt on town hall is some of the easiest debt to issue. And so based on what our CIP looks like and how much more complicated it might be to issue debt on other projects like streets or sidewalks, I would recommend that if you're going to issue debt on the things it's easy to issue debt on and use your fund balance for other capital projects. Your savings is available for you to use one time, just like they are personally. So whatever you use it on, feel good about it, and move on.
In December of 2020, when we first looked at the numbers, we had $81 million in fund balance. And now I believe we have $90 million in fund balance.
I don't remember 80. I remember 60. I wonder if there's an investment in fixed assets that's included in that number. I'd be happy to share with you our audit report where we track what it is. 81 sounds like it might include funds that are not just the general fund.
Everything that the town has sold, starting in 2015, from the Anchor Mill, the green waste that we've sold, the Blythe Building, is that money in fund balance now?
Yes, yes. The Blythe building sale was ballpark $1.8 million, and that will have dropped into fund balance at the end of FY '22. The $1.35 million we got for sale in Anchor Mill, ballpark 2018, would have dropped into fund balance, so it's a part of that 60-ish million general fund balance. 40 acres that we sold, Greenway Solutions on Holbrooks Road, that would have dropped into fund balance. That was an FY '18 sale as well. And there was a Walter Street sale for just under $200,000. Those four added together, ballpark $3.8 million contribution to fund balance, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Ms.
You
Huffman,
have that
how
off
many
the top of your head.
how many projects have we, outside of the scope of the budget process? Any idea how much money we've spent outside of the budget process? I know we did earmarked the 300,000 for I know, I should not put you on the spot like that, because while you love numbers, you can't have them all in your head.
I immediately made eye contact with Steve, and to me, in previous years, it's not unusual for our CIP to have funded, in the current year's budget, 3 to 6 projects, and 3 to 6 has become 15. Is that a fair estimate? So, I mean, the number and the cost of those projects has gone up exponentially.
I think my point was, though, that we bought land, but the things that we've sold doesn't just sit, it's not sitting in an account earmarked solely for at this point. It's sitting in the fund balance with everything else.
So you're probably getting that. There are things sometimes that we buy that, it makes sense at that time, i.e., we may have not put in the CIP to put a light at the Hampton, but it made sense. Or we purchased the land back here for $775, but it made sense, it gave us another option. So yeah, I don't know off the top of my head how much those numbers are. I'd be willing to bet Jackie doesn't either, but she'd be better than me. But every year there's items like that, a couple $100,000. This year, at least $1 million. If you figure the light, and then the land's probably about $1 million. But that's every year we have items like that to come up.
Any other additional conversation, discussion? I mean, it's a heavy topic. Commissioner Partee?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm leaning towards the Town Center. And I'm going to try to articulate why I'm leaning towards the Town Center. This past weekend, I had an opportunity to go home and visit friends in my former neighborhood in the town of Hempstead. And we have the town government seat. It's like the town hub where all your buildings are in one area. And it's convenient. My dad, the Dr. Willie L. Partee, said that he taught us that procrastination is a loss of opportunity. And I think we have opportunity to build over in an area where we have the square footage, we have the parking deck, approximately 294 square parking lanes, and seeing this opportunity and not to procrastinate, because I believe procrastination is the grave in which opportunity is buried. We have an opportunity to build a great facility on that area, and not opposed to Plan B, but Plan B, to me, gets in the way of a vision of a Greenway that's going to allow our citizens to walk directly from the town Greenway to Veterans Park. And we have an opportunity to build on this side a social area where we can have businesses such as cafes, businesses, of retail, that will extend into Veterans Park and have a social districting in this area. The cost, $19,000. However, we're going to borrow against ARPA funds is reasonable. The square footage is reasonable. So in that instance, I think we have the opportunity to build a fantastic facility because the infrastructure is there and move forward and take advantage of this opportunity and not procrastinate. It must move forward.
Commissioner Munger.
I have a number of questions. So, under 4B, we would build a 4-story behind us. The facility would be gutted and redone. What would be housed in this building?
I assume community space. One of the things they haven't done is, where previously on the sliver, we kind of went in and put cubicles and office space. We haven't done any of that for across the street. So I would assume this building, that's a board decision, but this would be community space, I would assume. You know how they had community space in that sliver over there with the round tables on the first floor? Obviously, this would be much bigger. If this is an 8,000 square foot building and that footprint on the floor over there, they vary depending on but just say 12, 12, 12, just for the sake of it. But, so obviously there's not 8,000 square foot of community space over there. It's probably 3,000 maybe. But that's a board decision, but that makes sense to me.
Okay. I have a lot of questions, sorry. And just to confirm, Commissioner Partee mentioned the current parking deck has 294 parking spaces. Is that an accurate statement?
Let me just make sure. The parking deck, 3 levels, 293 spaces.
293, off by one, old man.
Could be wrong. Yeah, it could have been. That's an old email, so who knows? Maybe they've added 1 or 2 spaces.
All right. At one point in time, if memory serves, and you can help me out here, did we ever put an RFP out for the sliver?
So before my time, so Jackie and maybe some others were here, my understanding is that there were some requests for proposals for the sliver, and I think the actual piece of land where North State is going. And I'm going to use those because there are multiple parcels. If you look back, there's actually 2 parcels on the sliver, I think, and there was 7 or 8 parcels on the North State property. So I'm just counting them as 2 properties, but there were multiple different properties encompassed in those 2 projects. And as far as my understanding on the history of that, we got no takers on the sliver. I'm looking at Jack and Jackie, and really no takers on the North State. And then when I got here, the board directed, hey, and there was timing, and I won't get too far in the weeds, timing, when we did it, maybe how we did it, et cetera, who we sent it out to. So the board asked, hey, let's go back out and see what we can get proposals on, at least for the parcel 2, we'll call it, where North State is proposed to build. And then that land, the board accepted that, we sold that land, and I'm just going to round, I think it was about $600,000, maybe a little less, but somewhere around $600,000.
So,
About right, Jackie?
Yes, I would have said 566.
so essentially, we couldn't find a developer who found the sliver to be economically viable to
And you have to remember, there were issues, I think some folks maybe mentioned this, the parking deck, so you've got a sliver of land there that ultimately there are private uses associated with the parking deck, so you could not potentially sell that to a private entity to build there because of the bond with the deck. And if you recall, in 2021, we were able to get that refinanced and remove those restrictions, which made that parcel, opened up opportunities for that parcel to actually potentially have someone who may be interested, because then you could sell, for lack of better terms, parking spaces in the deck. that was really, whenever we put that proposal out, it was probably a lost cause. Because you get no parking with it, how are you gonna build it?
Okay. Second. On the current existing DPK, one possible outcome, if we chose 4B, would be the possibility of moving the police station into the DPK building. Is the current police station facility at or near capacity?
I haven't looked at it in a while. I think the square footage on that building is in the 20-some thousand range. And obviously, it's not gonna be 18,000 square foot per floor, because it doesn't carve, it makes, on a simple math, yeah, you look at it that way, but when you carve it up, you know, some floors are less than that, et cetera. At some point in time, are we gonna have to look at probably a new police station? Yes. But with the DPK in there, and assuming they go to 2040, you know, unless you buy out or do something like that, you know, I don't know that they would be leaving before 2040, but that is a possibility in the future. But
Okay.
it depends on if it can't be a possibility if you're gonna build over there and potentially use the space, you know, the first and second floor for future use, so. But if you were to do 4B, and then you decided, well, what do we do with that space in the long term? Yes, it could definitely be a very good option for a police station.
Okay. Can you tell me approximately what the sliver is worth and what the current town hall and behind is worth?
Geez.
I know that's a tough one, but.
So the sliver, I just don't know, because the sliver is worth little or nothing without the parking. I won't say nothing. You know, you look at the tax value and see what it's worth, probably not worth a lot. But what makes it valuable is parking. You gotta have that parking. That's why I'd never went anywhere from the get-go. Here, I'm just looking at tax value. If I recall, January, you know, we got a steel trap like Jackie here maybe, but I think January 21, the value here I'm rounding was roughly 1.6 million, and then the I'm gonna say white building behind us, call it Foster's or auto parts store or whatever, was about 200 sometimes. So I think 1.8 or so.
Does that include the empty lot?
Not the new lot we purchased. I'm just talking about the white building sliver behind us and then the town hall. You know, there are two lots here, but I'm just including the parking and the building. And then also the one lot behind us. It's 3 lots, but town hall occupies 2 lots, and then the white building behind us. So I think it's about 1.8.
Benefit of the doubt, let's assume his steel trap is 100% correct. There's a reval effective in 4 months.
Yeah. But if I add that extra piece back there, I'm thinking I'm getting up to about 2.75 million.
If you just say we paid $775 for it, you know, just kind of throw that number in there, and that gives you just some general thoughts and ideas. And we sold the police station at roughly 1.9, I'm rounding up, but that had more acreage. I haven't looked at what the acreage over there is compared to with the additional acreage on the back, how they compare. I have not looked at that, so I'm not sure how those acreages compare. The buildings are very similar. This is roughly 8,000. I think that was 8,500. So building-wise now, condition-wise and tearing down walls and things like that, I'm not sure, you know, gutting them out, because that one was basically gutted out too.
So, I mean, hypothetically, we were able to get 2.75 million. We could use that to offset the cost of building a town hall over there. Would that be a fair? Okay. The next one's a little bit more tricky, and I don't know if either one of you want to venture out there, but I guess when I look at the sliver, I mean, if you don't build town hall there, you're not going to build anything there. And that's just my opinion.
I'll take a stab at that. Actually, there were some plans. Originally, there were some elevations that were drawn on some of the plans that put a building there that was, and Jack had to help me out because he's been here a while, but it was commercial retail space, and it may have allowed for some living quarters above, but, you know, probably fairly similar to the footprint of the town hall. So that was proposed, and I think that was in some of the packets that they sent out, what could go there. like I say, the biggest issue there was no parking to be had until we did the refinance. So that would have been impossible. Now, is it possible now? Sure, I think it is.
And if we do that, and I'm going to hold off on that question, sorry. The other question, again, kind of relates back to this in terms of what you could do with this size of a lot. What could be put here instead? And the opportunity cost related to that. If I look at the opportunity cost that building a town hall here and occupying 2 corners, as opposed to building a town hall over there and opening this one up for residential, commercial, the property tax revenues that could be generated by this particular corner way overwhelm what could be generated by that corner. Would that be, and I know it's a guess.
I mean, probably because you're looking at a much bigger piece of land, so more, height of buildings, more square footage versus the little sliver. I mean, that would make sense to me, that, yeah, you probably get more because you got a lot more land to work with. There, you just got a little sliver, and then, parking. So you can't get so big of a building over there. Here, you've already seen the kind of size buildings you can get, depending on how you want to park it, how much parking, depending on the uses. That drives parking. So generally, I would say yes, because it's much bigger land.
I'm going to leave it there for now. Thank you.
Commissioner Kidwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's been a lot of talk about community space and community space here, community space there. How many people are knocking at our door to rent out Town Hall?
I probably had to punt to MJ, but I've never had anybody call me.
Okay.
Typically, we don't rent out this space, and maybe the board did. I'm looking at Janet over there. Have you ever rented out this space, Janet? You can just yes or no. You can give me a head nod.
Well, we did not rent it for a fee. We did allow groups to use it in the past, but like, for homeowner association meetings, and nonprofits, but we don't do that anymore because of security issues that have come up over the years.
Okay.
And we did not charge for the.
So I'm glad to hear those security issues won't be a problem in the future, I guess. Everything will be safer with a new community room in any town hall. The one option we're not seeing on here is option C, 4C, I guess. And that's to, do nothing. And stand fast with that. I still believe we don't need a new town hall. I mean, heck, we could rent space in the business center over there. They got 62,000 square feet available, $30 a square foot. Next 25 years would be squared away. But these are the only 2 options that have been presented. And I am grateful that more than one option was presented, whether I agree with either one or not. I think that was something that needed to be done for the residents of the community to give their honest feedback, whether it's the sliver or option 4B or whatever option they choose. So.
Anyone else? Commissioner Boone?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to make a motion if I could. I'd like to make a motion to approve and fund option 4B as in boy that was presented by Edifice Creech and Associate. As the town continues to grow, a new community building will be needed to provide the citizens of Huntersville the services needed if the town wants to continue to prosper.
Commissioner Boone, you said to approve and fund 4B?
That's correct.
Was there anything else in that motion? Was that it?
Well, I mean, there was a couple more sentences, but you got that.
I got the gist.
Yep, you got it.
And I have a second. Any discussion around the motion? Seeing none, call the vote. Motion to approve and fund 4B. Four, those opposed? Ward 2. So this board is going to spend $28 million on a new town hall. What would the next steps need to be? Mr. Roberts?
So, Mayor, obviously, we need to talk to our, I'll just say contractors. To determine the next steps forward, we've got to look at any existing contracts we may have to see how we move that forward. We definitely would have to come back to the board for any budget amendment to spend any money. So that would have to come back to the board. So we would probably lay out some options, but what you've told me, what I take from this is I've got to go back and do a little homework and come back to you. Before we spend any money, you're going to have to do a budget amendment, whether that's getting us to various stages. Obviously, there's no way we're going to be asking for a budget amendment right now for $28 million because we don't even know if that's what it's going to cost. So if we were to come back, it's probably in phases of what we'd ask for a budget amendment for. So we got to do some homework.
Okay.
The next phase is let us do some homework, look at the contract that we existing have. Can we shift, here, and how do we move that forward and come back with some more information that you will have to vote on to spend some dollars.
Thank you. I have to say I am shocked that this board is spending this much money, this much taxpayer money. That makes me very nervous.
I can explain why. I can give you my reason. I second this because I think it's the most long-term and all-encompassing plan. The location of the parking lot will add access for Veterans Park. Future uses for the sliver can be discussed later. It's fiscally responsible in the long term, and it's the lowest cost per square foot, so we don't so we're not at this again in 20 years at a higher cost per square foot, because as you said, this is generational, and I don't want to cause more debt for the next generation. And I don't want us to have just adequate space. I want to be proactive, which I feel that we've been lacking on this topic.
Thank you. Still makes me nervous to spend roughly $38 million at the end of the day, but whew, it's a lot of money. I just don't know if we've ever spent this much money on something other. I'm not even sure we spent this much money on a road project, so it makes me nervous. It makes me nervous. It just makes me nervous. All right, we're going to move on to item 10C. This is the CRTPO grant application for Highway 21 Greenway Tunnel. Mr. Jay Cox, how are you?
Great to be here.
Glad to have you here. Share with us this 21 Greenway Tunnel project.
So after discussions with all the department heads as well as with the town manager about what would be a good CRTPO grant, from those discussions, looking at the CIP, was decided that this would be our best opportunity for a CRTPO grant this cycle, the Highway 21 Greenway Tunnel. So quick overview, estimated cost, $3.25 million. Currently, we're showing a grant request of $2.6 million, and the town match, which is the minimum match of 20%, is $650,000. These funds will not be needed until at the earliest fiscal year 27. I also want to talk a little bit about the match, and if we want to do more of a match, how many more points you get, and then also talk about the last cycle, those matching, or what those groups match as part of their non-motorized grant. So for every 5% increase would be an additional $162,500. So for example, the 20% gets you 20 points, $650,000. You add $162,000 to that, it's 25%, 25 points. So you go all the way up to 50 points. That's the most you can get as part of your match. The 12 applicants from last cycle, 4 of them were funded. So 9 of them did a 20% match, 2 did a 25% match, and 1 did a 50. And the ones that got funded were the 50, the 225, and the 120. So out of the 9 who committed 20%, 1 of them got funded. So to try to really, you're kind of guessing what other people are going to actually put as their match. So 2 years ago, when we got the CRTPO grant for the Park Greenway, our match was 50%. We were the highest, and I think there was 3 other groups who did 40, and a few that did 20, 25, but there was only 7 applications. So once again, you don't know how many applications you're competing against. So right now, we're showing the 20% match on that. And just a quick overview, I know y'all seen the map before. In orange is the project we're talking about, just north of Arahova and Highway 21 intersection. That will take you under 21. instead of the at grade crossing at Arrowhove and 21. And then that's the crossing currently. That will be going in as part of the road project that's under construction. So it's approximately about an 80-foot crossing. In perspective, that's almost twice as wide as coming from Town Center to Slice House across 115, just to give you an idea how wide that is. It's about twice as wide as that. And some of the bullet points of why we think this is a strong application. So this comes directly from the scoring criteria from the grant. We feel a lot of these we hit pretty hard on. Critical opportunity. Obviously, this is one opportunity to do it. If you don't do it now, you'll never do it again. So it's a critical opportunity. We'll score really well on that. High and moderate interest destinations. We hit a lot of the high and moderate between parks, downtown area, park and ride, mixed use, schools, employment centers. We will hit pretty high on points there. Connecting to existing facilities. So by the time this project is built, the greenways on both sides will be waiting to connect to it. It's on adopted plans for the town and county. Placemaking amenities connects to the art in the tunnel that's going on. That'll be under construction here shortly. And then the desire need. So like I mentioned before, this is the only state road we'll be crossing from the 7-mile green from downtown up to Burkeville. And then safety, crossing a multi-lane facility crossing. Like I mentioned, there's 5 lanes to cross there. There's documented pedestrian and vehicle traffic accidents on 21 in this area. We reduced the human exposure, so this completely removes the human exposure from vehicle traffic. And the average daily count on Highway 21 is 18,000 vehicles. So that completely removes exposure to the human. And then emissions reduces the short local trips. Social equity and health equity. We got a couple of low-income apartments that will be connected to this as well to get under 21 instead of crossing that grade. So it hits really high on those points. Feasibility, it's effective use of federal dollars. There's a percentage and amount of money you request. How you fit in that, we fit in pretty good. Amount of available funding requests, we're below the 20% of the overall funds. And like I mentioned, our local match could be better if you increase it by 5% increments. So you can't do like, we want 22%. It's either got to be 20, 25, 30. So it's every 5%. You can't go anywhere between it. So that's kind of where we're at. The grant application is due next month. So I know the time frame is short. The state has allowed us to wait until to see if we get funded through the grant. So if we don't get the funding, the town can either come back and say we're going to fund the whole thing or we're not going to fund it all. So really, this is more of allowing us to put an application in to see if we could get the funds. And then that's kind of the schedule that we're working on. I know that was quick, but any questions?
Open it up for questions. Commissioner Kidwell?
No, I'll wait.
Okay, Commissioner Kovacs?
One of mine kind of went towards you. I was going to ask you, just sitting on CRTPO, what you think just from conversations you've heard, do you think the likelihood of this being funded is high? Your
No,
impression?
I don't. And as I shared with town manager and Michael, conversation at CRTPO, when they were talking about this funds, they brought up very similar statistics that you did, that it was 50 and 60% matches that got funded on projects. Now, this is a different pot of money, but we are competing against a lot of different municipalities. And honestly, we're getting a new road with a 4-way crosswalk signalized. And I really, if you can go back to that slide, please. Let's talk about, it is 80 feet, but in God, when you cross a crosswalk, you hit the button and it tells you how long you got. Is it, 30 seconds, a minute and a half, or whatever it is, because I wait at these crosswalks and I can see it counts down for you. It's the most remedial thing in the world. And it says, hey, you've got 40 seconds, 30 seconds, and it counts, and then it starts beeping. So this is more than enough time to get across these. And sorry, I'm going on a tangent here, so I'm going to answer your question. I don't think the 20% is going to move the needle much, in my opinion. But I could be wrong.
Any other questions?
And you said that we can approve this basically conditionally, so we approve it, and then if we don't get the funding match, then we can just decide not to do it, and we wouldn't lose anything? Okay.
Yes, Commissioner Partee.
Before I make a motion, I just want to ask, Ms. Hoffman, do we have money in the general fund or surplus where we can partially fund this if in event we do not receive CIPRO money? This is an opportunity. I think you said like it's a critical opportunity, Mr. Jaycox.
At the end of our last audited year, our fund balance was 58 million. I suspect that at the end of '22, our total fund balance will be 59 million, just shy of 60. Could you choose to fund a portion of it? You can use your fund balance for whatever you choose.
So we can break off $600,000. Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm ready to make a.
Just a moment, Mr. Roberts has a.
So I was going to say, one of the reasons I looked at 20% was because, there was maybe not 100% yes, this is a, great project, we got a crosswalk. So the reason I've sort of suggested a 20% is because this is it checks all the boxes, but I think Commissioner Kidwell is right, we're going to compete with other ones. But there's no loss here. If we don't get the grant, we don't get the grant, and this is what you get. It's really up to the board. Do you want to actually put more money to it? I went with a minimum based on sort of the vibes I was getting from the board, but I thought, we've got these CRTPO grants, we've got a bunch of them before, and this one's a much better project than the little Greenway project when I say from a safety standpoint, than the Greenway project that we did 50% on in the business park. And the state is all over this one too, so that's why I think it may have a chance, but I don't know what's in the pot against it, so.
Commissioner Boone?
No, go ahead.
I wasn't here at the last meeting when this got brought up. Just, did I recall correctly that you said a bridge over would be exponentially more?
That's from the state. Their thought was they didn't really look into that because of the elevation on both sides of the road. It's lower than the road. That makes it even harder to get above.
But that's something we could do at a later point, we wouldn't be tied to right now? This is just curiosity because it wasn't here.
If you get the tunnel, you probably wouldn't do a bridge.
No, I know, but I'm saying if the bridge didn't pass, we could look in, if the tunnel didn't pass, we could look into a bridge later.
You could, but it's going to probably be a lot more money.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Partee? Oh, I'm so sorry.
Yes, I have a question for Commissioner Kidwell. If we went from 20 to 30%, Rob, do you think our chances would be any better with CRTPO of getting it approved?
Commissioner Moon, I honestly don't know. I really don't. I know that whatever this board chooses is the vote I will take down to CRTPO and present. But I can't tell you if 30% is going to move the needle. I just can't.
Well, we're always spitballing these every time we go down there with an application.
So, Michael, can you, maybe go forward a slide, right here. As we discuss this, I want to talk about, the safety changes, multiple lane crossing, documented pedestrian vehicle accidents. We haven't had a person hit over there. We talked about this last week, or the last time, and the chief came with amazing memory numbers. I mean, he knew statistics going back 15, 20 years. I was so impressed that he wasn't prepped for that meeting, that he just had that off the top of his head. We talk about emissions and pollutant reduction here, reduces the need for short vehicle trips. I mean, if they use the Greenway and they go across the crosswalk and on the sidewalk, they're already reducing that, so that seems like it's just, it's put there to make people feel good. And the same with social equity and health equity. We have sidewalks on that other side of the street leading to those apartment homes and into the areas going all the way up to the frozen yogurt area. And then if you cross over, it's sidewalks heading up the other way as well to those businesses. Like I said, I'll take whatever this board votes to CRTPO, but I think this is a waste of money. I would rather us look at our CIP and say, you know what, I want to move something up on the list, rather than, take money from the general fund. I'd rather see us put this money towards existing dirtways that need to become greenways and talk to the county and say, hey, listen, this board's ready to spend whatever it is, 600 and some odd $1,000. You know, how much more greenway could we get built and complete that greenway plan, which our greenway committee has put together? So my 2 cents. You guys tell me how to vote. I'm sure Commissioner Partee has a motion ready to go.
Commissioner Partee?
Yes, Mayor, thank you very much. I just want to thank the Greenway Trail and Bikeways Committee because they put a lot of time, effort, volunteer time to come up with a viable Greenway project throughout Huntersville, connecting Mecklenburg County and the other towns. At the last meeting, they wholeheartedly stated that they would like to have this tunnel part of their network. It will save lives. It would increase the viability of connecting our townships, this town in particular. And we created a committee, the Greenway Trails and Bike Committee, to give us advice. And to totally ignore them is not acceptable in my mind because they are there. They are our citizens, and they elected us to build and to assist them in the build and providing access in ways that this community can enjoy, our residents can enjoy our parks, greenways, and bikeways. So if we can just vote on a $30 million project, $650,000 is not going to break this town. And I think we owe it to our citizens, the Greenway Committee, to pass this resolution. I'm ready to make a motion.
Commissioner Partee, you have the floor.
I make a motion that the town board adopts a resolution to amend capital improvement program and apply for the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning organizational funding for the Highway 21 Greenway Trail project. Approved 21% matching fund of $650,000. The town is awarded the CPR grant. In the event, the town is awarded the CRTPO grant in the June, February of 2023.
There's a motion on the
Second.
floor. There is a second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Kidwell.
Madam Mayor, I don't think this is about the $600,000 you're spending it. This is about a need versus a want. This is, we want a tunnel. We don't need a tunnel. And that's my point. We don't need to spend the money on a tunnel when we already have a pure path set up going through.
There's a motion, there is a second. All those in favor of the motion? 3. Those opposed? 3. It looks like I get to break a tie this evening.
We can go back one if you want.
You own that. I look at this tunnel as an opportunity to continue our quality of life. I think, yes, there is a crosswalk there, but I see children, I see bicycles, I see dogs, I see moms, I see strollers. There's a lot of things happening in that intersection that I am, as a mother, uncomfortable with. So I will be supporting this motion. I think not only does it make that crossing safer, but I also think that it adds to the quality of life for our community as we cross the east-west corridor of the Greenway. So I will be supporting this motion this evening. We'll now move on to item 10D. And this is an exaction authority pursuant to NCGS 160D. And this has Commissioners Munger and Kidwell on the list here. So I will turn it over to which one of you would like to take this. Your fingers are being pointed,
I'll let
so.
you start. There I go. I would just like to say that Commissioner Munger and I have long talked about how we can get our developers to put more money in the pot for projects around our town, around our community. And we have been told over and over and over, negative, not going to happen. This regulation does allow us to do that just a little, but it lets us move in the right direction. I was reading it, Commissioner Munger sent me a text or an email and said, have you thought about it? And I was like, oh my gosh, working on the same thing. So we put on here so the board could discuss more fully this opportunity.
Commissioner Munger?
Sure. Actually, I would like to get some input from either Jack and/or Emily in terms of whether or not we're actually doing everything we can under 160D. I think you get the general gist. I'll let you run with it.
Sure. So actually, when we initially started working on the 160D updates to our ordinances, this particular subsection is one that we had left a placeholder for because we were running against a deadline to implement the changes to comply with the legislative changes in 160D. And so we needed to go back and look at what other municipalities were doing in terms of the formulas that they were using. And so recently, when we updated our subdivision ordinance, we circled back to this particular subsection, and we're able to do some research and look at what other municipalities were using for their formulas. And we had a pretty lengthy discussion at one of the HOAB meetings about, what we found. And the formula and this particular language was incorporated on July 18th, 2022 into our subdivision ordinance. So it was just recently incorporated, but it now is an option to utilize.
So we have already taken the necessary steps to be able to get, and I always just mess up the term, exaction fee. We've done everything we absolutely can necessary in order to procure those
Correct.
funds.
We went ahead and, like I said, in this second round of edits as related to the subdivision ordinance, we went back in because we'd previously put a placeholder there. We needed to hone in on the formula and what we were going to use. We now, with these most recent edits in July, have implemented that language into our subdivision ordinance and included a formula that could be used so that now developers can use this option. We have not, Jack, if I'm mistaken, had anyone use it thus far because it is such a recent change.
So
Okay. Yeah, that sounds
clear,
good.
this board adopted the incorporating these changes into our subdivision ordinance on July the 18th of 2022. So we have not had any developers as of yet come through utilizing this.
That would be a question for Jack to confirm, but I would assume no, given the newness.
Mr. Semino?
Correct.
Very good. Thank you for confirming that. All right. Any other discussion around 10D?
I just wanted, in the end, basically to say, I would like us to direct staff that any future discussions regarding 160D and this exaction fee point right back to this meeting. We've discussed it, put it to bed, it's already part of our ordinance, never want to hear about it again.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to item 10E. Ms. Cagle, this is the town personnel policy updates.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. These updates are a group of updates that we looked at that help us address the shifting workplace and labor force that we've been talking about for the last few years to help us become better positioned to recruit and retain employees. So while we recognize that pay is always the #1 issue for people looking for jobs and wanting to stay with jobs, this goes to more of the intangible factors that employees are looking at more and more often now, like a better work-life balance, like flexible work, hybrid work schedules, morale, helps for morale, and then also touches on career mobility or promotability for employees. So the items, you have a summary of the items in your packet. The first group, and I'll just go through them real quickly, see if you all have any questions. The first group go towards compensation and classification. Performance evaluations right now, what we do for employees who have come off probation in the year that we have a merit, they're only eligible for a portion of the merit based on the number of months they are off probation. Obviously, that is a pay issue, but it's also a morale issue where people feel like they've done everything that they should and they're only getting a portion of the merit. So recommending to remove that prorating of the merit for people who are coming off probation. Okay. Work period, we've talked about this, allowing an option for employees to have a regular telecommute schedule with a maximum of 2 days per week. This is something we talked to each of the departments about. You know, we're looking at organizations that are 100% remote. We have people who are interested in that, so we thought this was a good balance for our employees. And the third piece in this section is developing incentives, employee incentives. So this would be something like if we have a public works employee who gets their CDL and it's not a requirement of their job, that they are eligible for incentive for going above and beyond to pursue that. In Parks and Rec, it might be a backflow prevention certificate or something like that. And then also looking to develop career pathways. Again, we have this in the police department, something that we look to build for employees in other areas that will help them know where they can go, help build their future within the town. The next grouping is our leave policies. You all adopted an additional holiday at our last meeting and appreciate that. Looking at increasing our vacation leave policies. So right now, we have, I'm going to say 10 days when you're hired, 10 days for vacation, 12 for sick leave. The question is, why do we fund more for sick leave than we do for vacation? So this would be to increase our vacation to match our sick leave policy. And then also for our anniversaries, when an employee is a year, 2 years, 3 years, they get 4 hours for each year of service on their anniversary date. This would increase that to 5 hours. Did I say 4 years? Would increase that amount. And when we look at other organizations in the League of Municipalities surveys, we fall behind right now, especially at 5 years and 15 years for the amount of leave that we provide to employees. 5 years is like the golden number. If we can keep people here 5 years, they tend to stay longer. So making sure that we have every opportunity that we can to provide them benefits that will keep them here is what we're looking at with that. We also talk about allowing up to 40 hours per year of unpaid leave. Again, for new employees who don't have paid leave, we're increasing that amount, but also allow them the ability to have flexibility to take unpaid leave if they have circumstances where they want to take a vacation. And then also capping that at 40 hours. So we can't just let people go, you know, come and start and take 2 months off, but keeping it at 40 hours per year. The last two pieces, these are shared leave policy and resignation policies. These are more, you know, on the flip side, making sure that we are focusing our resources where we can to keep people here and not allow them to extend beyond by having large balances of sick leave, of vacation leave to extend their employment beyond their last day worked. That is a super short version. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Commissioner Kidwell.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And I think I know the answer to this. When we separate vacation and sick time, why don't we just do like just a PTO, like paid time off? Does that have to do with the retirement benefits at the end of a service?
Correct. So right now, with the retirement system, the unused sick leave that you have when you leave the organization or when you're ready to retire count toward your years of service with the retirement system.
That's what I thought.
So-
Thank you.
Commissioner Partee? Oh, perfect. Any other questions? Commissioner Boone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to make a motion, but before I make that motion, and I looked at the agenda late last week, and I was going to throw a few things in here, and it's just not fair to you and the people that put this together, because there's a lot of hard work into it, and I appreciate the effort you put into it, but I'd like to know if you could possibly come back to this board sometime before the end of December of this year, of some type of policy or program that we would have for people that can't work at home on, let's say, a snow day. I think at one time we called it snow days. But if you could look around and see how we could help those employees out for their retention and their recruitment. But with that, at the end of that, I'd like to make a motion to approve the updates to the Huntersville Town Personnel Policy that is related to recruitment and retention.
There is a motion, there's a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now go ahead and do mayor and commissioner reports. I have hopefully not a lengthy report. First on my list is the EDC. Currently, the EDC is working a total of 43 projects. 24 of those are in Huntersville. In regards to the MTC meeting back in August, we had an informational around the Charlotte Transportation Center redevelopment update, but we also had a discussion informational around microtransit. Microtransit Phase 2, they are looking at first mile, last mile on-demand service. And they're looking at the Village Riders, 97, 98, 99, as well as Route 290 in Davidson as a possible conversion pilot. So that is looking, as next steps, we'll be looking at a 2023 implementation. Mr. Roberts and I did meet with Jason Lawrence from CATS to discuss the reliable transit service in our community with the Village Rider. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about what this microtransit on-demand service is going to look like for our residents. I do still have some questions around the accessibility because you would have to use the CATS app, and wanting to make sure that our seniors in particular, if they don't have a smartphone, that they can still access that service. So Mr. Lawrence has, and Mr. Roberts, you can correct me if I'm wrong, has stated there most likely would be a telephone number that you could call as well to schedule that service. So hopefully we'll see a better bus service, a more reliable bus service within our community with this new pilot that they're looking to promote. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like for all of us. And then our communications committee met last Monday, and we discussed the town pursuing use of a publicinput.com. It's a cloud-based community engagement software that will allow the town to seek feedback from residents in a variety of ways and is easily accessible as an online portal. We also got to take a look at a new mobile app. Commissioner Kovacs, I thought you would be very excited about this. That staff's looking into to connect residents within the town and vice versa. It would be interactive, which I think is exciting. And then we also got a brief update on the work of the 150th committee. And I do want to tell you all, you're going to be blown away by what this group is pulling together. I mean, it is going to be top-notch next year, so I'm excited about it. There will be a public announcement during our October 17th meeting with activities beginning December the 31st, running through the calendar year of 2023. So that is the update on the communications group. And then last but not least, for those of you driving around downtown Huntersville, whether you're over at Veterans Park or here in what I would like to call the square of Gilead and 115, to see the flags flying. Those flags are in honor of 9/11, and that's upcoming. And I just want to make sure that we're all taking a moment as we drive by those to take a pause. And with that, I have no other report to provide. Commissioner Munger?
It always catch me off guard there. Mine's short and sweet. Last week I was unable to attend the HOAB meeting. Commissioner Kovacs was kind enough to a table in my place, so I'm going to defer to her on that particular topic. On September 14th at 6 p.m., the Public Arts Commission will meet at the Town Center Rotunda. And as always, if you have an opportunity to give, please consider supporting our nonprofits. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Partee.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no commissioner's report for this past 2 weeks, but I did want to say something about 9/11. This month of September is really a month that I go through a lot of emotional ups and downs and swings and concentration because of my involvement in 9/11. But I want to quote Abraham Lincoln. "A house divided against itself cannot stand." For me, the month of September is a time of reflection on one of the most horrific days in my life and the history of this nation. September 11th, 2000, a normal, regular workday, became a journey into a hell of death, destruction, fear, horror, and terror. After 21 years, I can recount every minute of my presence at the World Trade Center. My duties and service on September 11th is well documented. But I want to talk about after the towers fell, how this country, America, the American people, were united. New Yorkers were unified across all ethnic communities. People were compassionate, complimentary of one another. I can remember a sea of humanity, men and women of all nationalities, standing on the West Side medium, the sidewalks of 34th Street to Chambers Avenue as I traveled in my Buick car. Waving of American flags, holding up signs made, saying thank you, God bless you, we appreciate you, for weeks. As my partner and I drove from the command post on the USS Intrepid to Ground Zero, the smoldering pile. September 11th was the embodiment of extreme hate that caused death, long-term physical suffering, and grief to survivors like myself, presently today. My reflection now, after 21 years, as a nation, we are becoming divided by a growing infrastructure of distrust, hate, which has become a malignant growth within our fabric of this country. I just hope, moving forward, we the people can prevent the next September 11th and heed the words of the late Abraham Lincoln. A house divided against itself cannot stand. Never forget. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Partee, and thank you for your service on 9/11. Commissioner Phillips?
No updates.
Commissioner Kidwell?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. CRTP will be later this month, but I'd like to give an update from the Pottstown Heritage Group. There's going to be a community engagement at Delwood Center on September 24th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. That's 508 Delwood Drive in Huntersville. It is a engagement with Habitat for Humanity for critical home repair. Please join us and learn and engage with teams from the Pottstown Heritage Group, Habitat for Humanity, and the Money Matters about how you can get critical repairs on your home. There will be food, drinks, and prizes. I encourage anyone who feels that they need that, please be there and engage. Thank you.
Thank you. That project in particular is a good one for us. I'm glad we were able to partner with them. Commissioner Kovacs?
Yes. As Commissioner Munger said, I did attend the HOAB meeting for him. A lot of what was discussed, we kind of brushed on today. There's the two biggest discussions were about the Harmony Agreement, which was presented earlier during the pre-meeting. And then what we just had a public hearing about the TA 22, and that was just the requirement to have individual lot requirements. So those were the biggest things that really came to them. There were some other discussions that'll kind of blend over into the next meeting. Lake Norman Chamber update, there's a bunch of stuff coming up. Tuesday, September 13th at 8:30 is the WINS Lake Norman Women's Network Meeting. It's open to anybody into networking, and it'll be at Brick Row in Cornelius with special guest speaker David Dowdy. Wednesday, September 14th at 10 a.m., there's a grand opening and ribbon cutting for Piedmont Federal Savings Bank, which is at 8600 Sanford Road, Suite 260. Thursday, September 15th from 11:45 to 1:15. It's the Lake Norman Chamber's annual Champions of Diversity Awards program. That'll be North Stone Country Club. Awards will be presented, and the speaker is Carmen Canales from Novant Health's Chief People Officer. So seats are $35 due to a plated lunch. There's networking and awards, and it's open to all as well, and you can register on the Chamber's website. And lastly, they are accepting registration for the Lake Norman Chamber Business Expo, Tuesday, October 11th at our Recreation Center. It'll be from 11 to 5 p.m., so visit the website or call the Chamber for more information about that. And Huntersville Connection, formerly the Huntersville Chamber, they will have their member meeting on September 20th at Angels and Sparrows at 4 p.m.
Thank you. Commissioner Boone?
All righty, let's bring this in then. Due to high demand, the town of Huntersville will be adding a fall session in 2022 for Huntersville 101 class. Huntersville 101 is free, it's hands-on, it's an interactive public information program that provides residents and business owners an insight into the town's services and the function of local government. The program is open to Huntersville residents and business owners who are at least 18 years old. The fall class begins September 21st and runs for 7 consecutive weeks from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. The space is very limited to just 15 people. Applications are being taken now on a first-come, first-served basis. So please contact Kim Strickland or call the town for more additional information. Madam Mayor, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
It has to be read.
Motion to go in closed session.
Pursuant to,
Pursuant to NCGS 143-318, period 111A6, to consider the qualifications, competence, and performance of an employee, Melinda Bales.
Second.
me, left me off there, but yes. Thank you very much. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Folks, we'll be back.